Now, this is a really lovely timepiece from about 1890 to turn of the century. It's got a nice enamelled face with Roman characters, beautiful hands, nicely embossed here with marble facings down here and here. It's a really very nice clock, in pretty good condition. There's a few little nibbles, one there, and here and there, which only help to illustrate its age. It's got the original key and a brochette adjustment, the little key here, which will alter the brochette spring here to allow for the time loss or gain adjustment. It's been completely dismantled, cleaned, polished, renovated, and now it's going. It's very nice. I cleaned the back and you can see the French movement inside with the number, which tallies with the pendulum there, which you can see the number. That tallies with the pendulum. It's got a brochet movement up here, typically French, to the end of the 19th century, turn of the 20th. I put a new piece of material in there because there's none at all in it, and this was painted black. I cleaned that up, I thought it looked better. It keeps good time for a clock of this age. You can adjust it by turning this little brochette key here, that one, which goes into this here, there, which will either wind the spring up to make it go a little faster, or lower it, and that's the spring on the pendulum from which the pendulum is suspended. The embossing has all been picked out in gold, and the marble's been cleaned off, and the whole thing, I think, now is a very nice illustration of the craftsmanship which was evident in clockmaking at the turn of the 20th and the end of the 19th century. Very nice, beautiful, solid, all wonderfully made. It's a single train timepiece. It doesn't chime, nor does it strike. I hope you like it. Well, here we have a Slate clock. It's a single train timepiece. It's pretty grotty, poor condition, stained on the top. One of the columns here is off, but we've got it set aside. The top section is loose, it will move. You can see it. It's not firm, and now I'm going to start work on it. I'll take this part out first. The now I can take this off and have a first look at it. You can see that it's very simple, but it's dirty. But we've got the original pendulum here, which again is pretty grotty, but it's got the same number on, tallies through with that number. So there are the tally numbers, which is nice, and the original key too. Right, I'm going to start scrubbing the clock down, now the case, and then I'll edit it so that it won't be quite as long, but I'll keep it running for a while. I'm using a kitchen pad, but this one's a new one. Last time I used a pretty exhausted one. Wasn't up to much. That's what I've got to do. Get all this up to a point where it's going to look tidy and cleaned up nicely. And I'll come back when I've done a bit more work, maybe in the middle, to see how I'm getting on, and then when it's hopefully finished. Well, I've put the plaster of Paris now in here and here to cover the steel stays that hold the top section to the bottom plinth, and I've got these packers in here which I'm now going to remove, and which is quite easy. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do about there's the finish of these, but you can see that they are now pretty substantial. There's a good old black. Try that. So now it's mel black, and see how that works out. That just seems to be a bit thick there. Oh, I've blacked the clock, both front and back. It needs now a polish, and the polish will help to smooth it out. I tried the back first with some different blacking, which was this, which is India ink. Wasn't any good. It came out all streaky. I had to strip it off again with sandpaper and of all grades to get it down, and then I blacked it. It was cheaper, that stuff, but it isn't any good. I've done the pilasters here, and the bases I'm going to take off the tape, which I put on the masking tape. And stick on the pilasters, which I've got painted, blacked up. Yeah. Like that. I hope that's going to be all right. So, and bottom and back. And that way up. Yes. Not so easy. Try again. Put that. Get that straight. That's it. Right. Right. So now is the time to polish. Start at the back. I'll edit it so it won't be too long, but you'll be able to see what's happening. Got to put this Bry Wax is a bit, appears to be a bit streaky, so you've got to put quite a lot of pressure on to get it evenly distributed. And when I've done this, then I'm going to do it again with a second coat. so that it's well covered. Well, there we are. That's for the first stage. Well, making progress. The plates, so they've been polished up and cleaned, both inside and out. That's that one. And here we've got the back plate, looking very nice. Where the that's the inside of it, cleaned up a bit. This one I'm particularly pleased with. That, if you recall, was pretty awful before, but now it's quite sparkly, and before it was black and it looked like possibly steel, but now it's actually brass, and the pallets themselves are steel. So that's nice. I'm pleased about that. And this one, if you recall, was nothing but rust, and now it's gleaming good and so much better. And the pendulum, well, the pendulum's a pendulum. That's now no, it would please to go on the back of the clock and look fantastic. So now we've got the rest to do, and I'll come back when that's done. Well, I have cleaned off all the parts now. There's the time, the cleaner, ready to go in. These are the wheels and parts from the front. And here at the back, we've got the two plates cleaned up, pendulum, pallet arbor, and the adjusting rod. Right, now to cut the spring, I've put it in a vise and another vise and a holder, and this is tempered steel here, not like this bit here which is not tempered. So this is the extension of the tail. I think it should be fairly straightforward. I can so cut off, that looks good, and here I've got the tail, which I will temper this section with a torch Put that on there. Get a marker, mark that out, and then this will have been tempered up to here or thereabouts, and I will then be able to file that lot down. So that's the next thing I will do. Now I've finished doing this. I have made the new hole and eye, which is not too dissimilar. There's a slight curve on this which I can adjust. I'm using the smaller collar to try and put it back into the barrel, and now I'll proceed with that. Right, here we are. Very simple movement, just a time train, nothing more. Nice, cleaned up nicely. I'll show you a comparison if I can with the original. So that's that. Well, I've now assembled it, and I put it on my leveling table to make sure that it's level all ways. I'll show you later. And you can see that it is working quite happily. Well, I wouldn't say happily, but it's working. The arbor palette is registering well in here, which is now quite clean. The pendulum is swinging easily. It was a little bit difficult because during my cleaning process I'd altered the position of this in relation to the arbor, which meant that it took some fine adjustments to get it to respond and to react properly. So it's in my makeshift Heath Robinson system of suspending the clocks. It'll probably stop now because it's wobbling around, but there's the front. It's all together. That's just to keep the clock upright, as it slips back otherwise. Still working under protest. And here we are. There's the pendulum in the back. Stopped for the moment. Doesn't like swinging around. It's working. So that's another step we've made. Right. Now the table upon which I put the clocks to test them is this table here, with an arrow pointing the direction it should be facing, because the surface upon which it's put is not level, and as a consequence, if I don't have this in the same orientation, then of course it's not going to be level. This is only level to the desk in this particular orientation. And this is so, that way and that way. So that means that I've got a dead right datum to work from, which is quite important. In other words, when I set the clock up and I get the pallet here, the anchor pallet, in balance with the escape wheel on this particular surface there, then that is a situation where the clock and the palette and the pendulum are all in harmony, and the pendulum will be pointing directly to the Earth's centre of gravity. Now I know I've done this before, but I'm going to do it again on this video for this clock to illustrate the gilding that we do. I'm following the lines, which will then be cleaned off afterwards with very fine wire wool. Now you can see that I'm a bit splodgy, but these, for instance, that and that had no gilding in it, and this tail has no gilding, although some of the gilding in it looks pretty good, but I would like to brush it up and make it a bit better. See, these have no gilding. So if you see it in real time, you'll understand it's not very difficult, and I'm fairly splodgy. But from my past experience, the most important thing is to get it into the grooves, into the etched lines. So that's as far as I'm going to go on this video, and then I will continue and marry the two videos up when I do the rest of it up here. Well, I've been working on the gilding on this clock. As you saw previously, I gilded it, and this is the result. Now I'm going to use wire wool, very fine wire wool, to remove the excess. I've started already, so some of the work has already been done, but I will just show you how I go about it so that you can see for yourself. And as I've said before in my previous videos, you've got to use a very light touch with 0,0,0,0 wire wool, and you just gently caress it over. It takes a little while. You can see that at times there are little areas where the gilding has run over, and you've got to keep at it, and to begin with it looks as if it's gone, but actually there's still a shadow there of the gilding, and there's a shadow here of the gilding, and you've got to make sure that that's gone. Don't press. You're not trying to get through to the slate. What you're trying to do is to use remove a tiny piece of gilding. You can see here, I hope, that area there, the gilding has run over, and it's going to take a little while to get rid of it, because even though you seem to get rid of it, it leaves a shadow, and the shadow is not good for you. It doesn't give a clean finish to it. Good. Now, just to finish off, I'm going to apply some Bry Wax. This is my Bry Wax. It's a good 20 years old, and it's virtually fluid. Before I do that, somebody brought up the point, which is quite valid, that when you use wire wool, you get fragments of wire wool around. Well, I've got a strong magnet here, which you can then just pass over the areas where you've been working, and any fragments of wire wool will be picked up and deposited on the magnet, if the magnet is strong enough. And then just a light coat of Bry Wax, very light, over. It's almost liquid, this stuff, but it does the job, and being very thin, it doesn't leave a heavy residue which is difficult to polish out. And that'll be dried off in an hour or so, and I can then polish it up, and that'll be that section of the work done. I'll polish at my leisure. Well, that's the next stage done. I've replaced this plate here onto the front of the clock, and this plate is now to go on here. That's got a number which identifies with this number of 2838 and 2838 there and there. So it was all meant to be. So now I put that on there, and then I can put this back into this section here, screw it in to the sides there, then I'll put the hands on and replace it in the clock. So I'll come on back to you when I've done that. Right, now I've set it up on my stand, which is, as you see here, the table which has got the adjustable legs on down here and there, which makes it level. So I can now get the clock in the right position on the stand so that the pendulum will be pointing to the center of gravity of the Earth. I've got it in beat by synchronizing with my industrial stethoscope, which makes it very clear as to whether it's going to be in beat or not. So I can move the clock to tune it by twisting it on the front, and by twisting it here on the case very gently, 0.5 millimeter or a millimeter or so, I could get the beat right, and then I go back here and tighten up these. So then I know that that clock, when it's level, is on the right beat, and the pendulum is perpendicular to the centre of the earth. And if it's not functioning properly, it's because it's not level, and so you'd pick one end up or the other end, or else, in the case of a French clock, you can adjust it by twisting the clock, loosening these off, twisting the clock to get the beat right, and then tightening these up. But it only needs to be a fraction, perhaps a millimetre or two, that you turn it one way or the other until you get it right. There, and these are the strops that I've suggested in another video, so that you can then slide the rings down like so, and the other one like so, and you can pick a heavy clock up without a problem. So, and that means that instead of trying to pick it up by these points on the end here, which are liable to come apart, and the clock may then suddenly break into 2 pieces or 3 pieces. I will do one more photograph of the clock. I think maybe not, but if you recall, this was moving, it's now firm. I've got to polish that. I missed out a bit of polish on that. But it's, I think, pretty good. I'm very happy with it, and bearing in mind that it was, rarely spares or repairs, and now it's on test. I'll be running it for a week. I've set it on this to make sure that for the next day everything is correct, and then when I put it out somewhere else, I won't touch the face of the clock, I won't touch this. I will just let it run and level it up one way or the other, because I know that when it's level, it will be true.